Hello, tabletop wargamers, and welcome to Tried and True, a podcast hosted by the Delaware War Machine community. Join us as we dive deep into topics around our favorite games, exploring methods and techniques proven to enhance anyone's gaming experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 18th episode of Tried and True. I am your host, Paul.
I'm Dan.
I'm Erica.
I'm going to be honest, we were just talking ahead of time. All three of us are kind of tired this night, so we're not really feeling the energy. Just know that we have a lot of stuff going on.
Low energy podcast.
It's not about War Machine. I just came back from a bachelor party over the weekend, so I am drained.
Yeah, Dan was showing us the pictures of it. He forged an axe.
That's right.
And ended up using it.
Yeah, we had blacksmithing class was the main attraction, so it was a pretty awesome time. But hey, we're here to talk about more War Machine stuff. Tired or not, we're still putting it out. So, Paul, what do we have on the schedule tonight?
All right, so this is actually what's really funny about this is that the last series that we did was the hosting your large event, and we were supposed to go and finish that up, but then all the privateer press interviews happened, and then Mark IV got announced, all this other stuff happened. So we're actually finally finishing up that how to prep and host your first large gaming event. So, I'm so glad that we're finally at the end. But before we get started, let's go ahead and get the introductions out of the way. I want to thank More Than Dice, Gonzo for giving us another platform. You can check out the other shows, Minority Report, Boca Broadcast, and War Dice on his network. If you like what you're listening to, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We're at 830 some subscribers right now, almost close to that 1,000. It's amazing considering that only a couple months ago we were trying to hit 500. So it's been great.
Oh, really quick, Paul. We need to think of something to celebrate once we hit 1K subscribers.
I think we should actually do the live cast where we're all on camera. I'm just kidding. No, that's awful.
That sounds like a nightmare sandwich.
I think Andy would rack you for that.
However, if we do get to 1,000 subbies, I might be down to clown.
I think it'd be all right. It'd be the worst one though, because there would be no audio editing at that point, so you can actually see what the episodes would look like without it. But
behind the scenes, just make sure you get my good side.
All right, and then what was it? And then if you really like what you're listening to, you want to support the cause, check us out on Patreon. You'll be able to get the early releases, be able to see the battle reports and the podcasts a little bit earlier than the others and the masses. And yeah, it's great. And just as a quick reminder, Pax Unplugged, Tried and True in Advanced Maneuvers. We're trying to get that situated, so it's already planned for December 3rd. Tony announced it on the Advanced Maneuvers live stream last week. Definitely recommend you go and check that out. Our friend Sam down in Maryland, he's on that episode. He talks about rebuilding the Maryland community, and they talk a little bit about what to do and how to look forward into Mark IV and how to rebuild. So it's a great listen.
Yeah, I would just say too, for PAX Unplugged, for those that haven't been to a convention yet, especially if you have a family, kids, and it's a great first convention. It's pretty chill. The community is great. Not saying that other communities aren't great at other conventions, but it's got that it's a good chill energy. So if you haven't been to a convention yet and you're kind of nervous about rolling up to one, PAX Unplugged is a great first convention to get your feet wet with.
I'll actually agree with that, because PAX was my first convention I ever went to, and I remember I was a little nervous, but you standing in line, everyone's just interested in nerding out, talking about games, and it's absolutely a wonderful time. Definitely recommend it. The convention center is huge. You'll see a bunch of cool vendors. You'll pick up some really neat swag, and they also have the board game renting area as well, which is just nice. You just play a bunch of games you've never even played before.
Yeah, I agree. PAX Unplugged is an incredible event, and it also has the advantage of having some really great food. The Reading Terminal Market is right outside the convention center, and that's a lot of really local vendors and sellers or distributors of food local to the Philadelphia area. You really can't go wrong with getting a meal in that place. So,
and there's a lot of historical things in the area. So if you do come with your family and friends, there's a ton of great restaurants, a lot of history in Philadelphia. So yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the outline for what we have scheduled for today. So on this episode, we're going to be debriefing Liberty Brawl. We mentioned that we're going to go do that a while ago, but Grant was, he just actually was on the one of the WTC teams for one of the American teams, so he's been very busy with that. But I was able to get a session with him, so I'll be playing that, and we talk about Liberty Brawl. We'll be debriefing Nova as well, at least like talking about it as we are inheriting it, and I guess where we need to look at to move forward. Then we'll debrief the Susquehanna Scuffle, talk about what was great about that event. Erica can go and basically share a lot of the information. She did a Google form. It was really cool about what people thought about it. And then really we're going to basically use the lessons learned from those 3 different events and how we can prep for PAX. So at this time, I'm actually going to play the recording for Grant Ritchie. So if you hear like the audio is a little bit weird, it was just done at another time. It was edited separately. So we'll go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll get into Nova. Hey, last minute, thank you so much for joining up with us. So I was just hoping that we could actually like share the debrief of Liberty Brawl and just talk about your experience with. I know you're prepping for WTC and everything, so I respect your time and really grateful that you were able to chat with us real fast.
Buddy, thanks for having me again. It's been, it's been a couple months since we did the Liberty Brawl, but schedules, you guys were doing some great stuff with PP. Obviously, the Mark IV announcement came out and everything kind of went crazy from there. So it's no problem. I might take a minute thinking of some of the answers because we got to go back to June, so have to bear with me. But yeah, it's great to be back on, and Liberty Brawl was awesome. I think everybody had a great time. One thing I will address, we did have some issues. The building was not air conditioned, which I didn't really know, and I've run tournaments there in the summer, and it's never been an issue. And
I heard that like people were like ending the day shirtless.
Dude, it was I literally I felt. I don't think I've ever sweat that much in my life, like consistently throughout an entire day. I mean, it had to be over 100 degrees in there. People left because it was, I mean, honestly, it was a factor. Like it was like literally everybody was like, this is terrible. Like we went and grabbed waters and ice. We tried to keep everybody hydrated.
Well, I mean, you got to worry about like the health concerns at that point, because you don't want people having like a heat casualty, like passing out and stuff.
Yeah. And I feel so bad. I really do. Like it was, again, I've run tournaments in the summer there. It's never been a problem. And of course, like the day before, it was fine. And then the next day is like 98 degrees, which in a warehouse, that's not air conditioning, just completely, what's the word I want, exponentially just, makes it 10 times worse, right? So it was really bad, and I apologize to everyone for that. That's the one thing I would say to anyone is however comfortable you think it's going to be, when you take 32 people and put them in a room, it's going to make a difference. The body heat, everyone moving around it makes a big difference. So you really got to think about that. Really got to think about the temperature. Even at your game store, it's going to be a little bit warmer.
All like muggy in there from all the sweat.
Yeah. So for sure, like easily, like first thing we would do differently is I would go buy like 10 industrial size fans and just plug them in all around that place. And it's a shame because you've been there. The venue's gorgeous and it's beautiful and it's so comfortable.
Because I was there earlier that day and I remembered like it was just fine. There was no heat issue or anything like that. I was comfortable hanging out, and then I had to leave to go do my own thing. And yeah, like I just heard about the story like afterwards. So
dude, I mean, I was drenched. The first thing I did when I got back, I was staying at Mike's house. The first thing I did is I was like, dude, I got to take a shower. Like I feel so gross. It was unbelievable.
And real fast though, because you were talking about like the challenges. Well, overall, like what went well? Like what in your planning phase, I guess, helped you out for setting up for success for the Liberty Brawl? And then what challenges did you see like on the day of?
Yeah, so a couple things that we did I mean, for sure, the first thing was having somebody like Seth, who's done an event of that size and several times larger than what we did there. So having Seth was a big help because he was able to prepare me for a bunch of stuff. There was a bunch of things Seth told me, people are going to drop, keep the wait list. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to drop. This is such a big, and then sure enough, like weeks leading up, like people were dropping like flies. Like I think we ended up going like to 7 or 8 deep on the wait list to grab people because things came up. Cars break down, people get called into I had to go, my wife's grandmother died, that week. I didn't get up there until halfway through, I think toward the end of round 1, because I had to go to a funeral that morning. Like it was things come up, and that's one thing I would certainly tell is like be prepared. If you think you're going to get 32, you're probably not. People are going to drop. Have a contingency plan for that. whether it's a couple locals that are standing by that maybe aren't super comfortable playing in that environment, but they could step in just to not have somebody have to have a buy.
You know what? We've actually done that with the Susquehanna Scuffle, was that when we were planning that, we all were bringing our armies, like the ones who were judging, just in case we had last minute drops, so that way, you'd have an opponent to go play, or there would be like a team of 3 as opposed to just like a team of 2. So, no, I agree. I think as organizers, it's a good idea to have your armies just on hand. Like, I know it might be a little bit weird as a judge that you might end up playing, but I mean, if it prevents the buy round, like, why not?
Ideally, you don't want to do it, and you can just to give someone a game, but you don't, like, I'm not playing because I'm not allowed to play, so I'm not going to play somebody right there just as, like, a side game, because I can't count that, unless it was like, okay, you're going to get the buy, but we'll play just so you get a game. But ideally, if you could have a local that just is like, I'm here, and there's a lot of people out there that like don't necessarily love the competitive environment, but are like, yeah, I'm here to play, so I'll play. I'll step in if we need it. So I think that's a good one, to try to get an even number in any capacity that you can. That was probably the biggest challenge. I mean, other than your normal stuff of accommodating 32 people, tables, which again, we are lucky that we have an event that's run 100-person tournaments. Tables, not an issue. Mats, clocks, the correct terrain. A mishmash of terrain can lead to a bunch of issues where one table has quicksand, that the brownish kind of war table one, and then the other one's using like the Muse one, which kind of looks like a hill.
Yeah, we're actually talking about that right now because we're planning for PAX Unplugged. I don't know if you've heard, we're trying to do a Mark IV Steamroller for PAX Unplugged December 3rd, and we're talking right now about having 16 unique tables. I'm like, that's a really tall order to go do. But what we're realizing is that we're consolidating the stuff that we have at Alternate Universes. I think Tony's seeing what he can get a hold of, so the tables might be a little bit of a hodgepodge of different stuff, but I think overall the goal is that it would be really nice. And is it possible that the Battle Bunker could maybe help out if we needed like extra like terrain to like make theme tables? Or
yeah, I'm sure that would be fine. I would just I can talk to Marcelo. Yeah, absolutely. I have plenty of terrain up there, so we can work that out as we get a little bit closer.
Nice.
But I would say if you gotta have a mishmash, one thing that you probably would want to do, if you can, is make some type of terrain sheet for each table. Because the one thing you should kind of do as an organizer, and Seth does this, if you're using anything that looks weird, that people aren't going to be like, okay, that's a hill, right? Then you should, if you're not going to stand up at the beginning and go, hey, if you see these are hills, but you can't do that with 16 tables worth of terrain if everything is different.
You know what I would imagine? It's like tall grass would probably be the biggest one, because I know we've used forest for tall grass, but then like we put like a different table topper on it, but then like the players don't realize it. So no, I get that.
So if you could make a cheat sheet to leave at the table and be like, here's the terrain for this table, because you don't want to have to go over to every table, and because that's what's going to happen. They're going to judge, you're going to come over, and they're going to be like, what is this, what is this, what is this, right? And you don't want to do that 16 times. So you definitely want to make sure that you've either explained what all your terrain is at the beginning of the tournament, or you have some kind of cheat sheet with a picture, which again, I know that's a tall order. I'm not actually saying everyone should do that, because that's kind of crazy, but
I mean, we got like 2 months to prepare, so
sure.
I mean 3 months, so it's possible. If there was anything that you would do different for the next time, or things that you wish that you would have done, like what would it be? So for us at least to kind of know going into PAX Unplugged.
One thing I didn't do that I would do is I would do some kind of ticketing system. What I did is just opened it up and let the floodgates open and told people to Venmo or PayPal me. And while that worked, it got kind of insane with it coming just in 4 different directions, and then people messaging me and, oh, hey, is it sold out? And now I got to figure out who sent the money in first and put people on a wait list in what order. So one thing I would say is if you can get like I don't know if it's like Eventbrite or some of the websites where you can, actually have people purchase the ticket through there. And again, I don't know what cut they take. I haven't looked into any of that, but I would just say for ease of, and for a smaller event, that might be fine. It depends on what size event you're looking to host. I should specify that. If we're talking about a larger event, though, I really think that is a much easier way to keep everything together. And other than the temperature, I think the things we talked about the first go round, I think if you can get all of those things together, I think you'll have a successful event regardless of, there's gonna be stuff that comes up day of. There just is. somebody doesn't show up, something gets lost, and you have to have a team. And real quick, I do want to thank Erica so much, because she was a huge help to us that day. She was everywhere. She was running around making judge calls. She was putting stuff in PG Swiss. You got to have people like that know the rules and are willing to just be, hey, I'm here to help, and whatever everybody needs, I'm going to go do.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was like putting in my document, is that we have a lot of people wanting to help out with PAX, but it's like we need to kind of figure out like roles, like who's a go-to person, who's going to be on scores, who's going to be a judge, and I think like having like a good support system would be great. But
yeah,
Grant, I really appreciate you spending the time chatting with us. I know that you're really busy between your family, WTC prep, and all that stuff, so just thank you again, and yeah, I wish you the best of luck up in Belgium.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it, and would love to come back on and chat again sometime. So you guys keep up the great work. It's awesome. Love what you're doing.
Thanks, man. I'll see you.
All right.
And that was my little talk with Grant. It was great. Dan, I'm sorry that you didn't have the opportunity to exchange war stories with him, but he definitely had a lot of things to talk about. And Erica, if you were able to hear, he definitely gave you a shout out for all your assistance that you ended up doing for the
thanks, Grant.
Liberty Brawl.
Yeah, I learned a whole lot actually, and took some of the things I learned from working with him, Dave, and Seth. For my toolbox to use in future events and steamrollers. So thanks for the opportunity. I had a blast. It was a great time.
Yeah, me too. It was a great event to play in. There was a lot of stiff competition, and it was, I had a lot of fun at that thing. So once again, thanks, Grant, for putting that on for us.
Okay, now with that, let's go ahead and talk about Nova. Now, Erica, Dan, Andy, and I, we were all at Nova. We played in the team event. Erica, Dan, and Andy, you played in the Masters event. So we've kind of already talked a little bit about Nova, but I think what would be beneficial is to kind of looking at it from an organizer point of view, because we're inheriting it. Like, that's what was told, right? That we're going to be running it next year. Well, like, I guess what we're starting with, what are some challenges or some needs that you think that need to be met?
First things up, we need stuff. Tables and terrain, right? We're told that Nova has a collection of mats to go on tables, which is a great start. And I believe they supply the actual tables as well. But when we went to Nova, we would have liked to have seen 3D terrain be a little bit more prevalent, or the ability to use a 3D terrain piece on top of a 2D terrain marker to make sure that you can have that level of precision that you might want in a Masters event.
Hey, so I wanted to ask real fast, because they did have the terrain there. They had basically a bunch of, it wasn't the neoprene material, it was the, I think it's like MDF that's like slightly beveled with like some stuff on there. I know they had it for craters and rubble and stuff. Is that ours for us to go use? Like, what's happening with that stuff?
So what I learned that week is, so like the War Machine Hordes, I guess War Machine now has just a huge box that sits on a pallet that uses the same terrain, objective pieces, scenario elements every year. And so everything that was over there was supplied by this box that's kept in a Nova warehouse throughout the year.
Okay, so then that means that when we end up picking it up, if we don't bring anything, we at least have that. But I think we can both agree that looking at the Lord of the Rings tables and like the 40K tables,
that'd be a budget box. We need to we need to jazz our tables up a little bit more.
We gotta upgrade. But hey, at least we have clocks.
Yeah, no, we at least have something to start off with, and I kind of keep telling myself, I don't remember the guy's name, but he said that for all the Lord of the Rings tables, it was not done overnight. It was piecemealed over year, and I'm looking at like PAX as like, if we're able to get like 16 tables that are decent enough, that's at least a good starting point for us to even continue to build, and we can eventually move those things down there for Nova and use it for that weekend too.
Yeah, I would also say too, so something that I'm kind of learning as I'm going through this process is venturing outside of the War Machine community and really talking and networking with other gaming communities. So like the Lord of the Rings guys, right? Like that was a great in on some of the techniques that they use, because their tables are absolutely gorgeous. They are like dioramas practically, and they're beautiful. I highly recommend that if you haven't seen either our music video or pictures from Nova, take a look. Those are great. But even like the 40K and the AOS stuff.
What was the one thing that you were talking about that you said something about like the planets or something?
Yeah, so there's a really cool video on YouTube. Katie and Sergeant Steele came out with a video, about a 10-15 minute long video about his greatest table narrative experience he had, which was at Nova this past Nova. So I've been kind of doing research, going online, checking out, Reddit and YouTube. And the guy basically said, like, this was the best tabletop experience he has had at any convention, and he's been going for a while. So what they did with this 40K narrative was they had 6 tables on like four rows, and each row was its own planet. So all the tables that were designated for that planet had a unique style. They had special rules that were associated with that planet. So like, let's say, group of table 1, you're better at casting magic, versus 3, they have, something weird going on there. And then they also introduced like third-party elements on the table. So you could score points by like rescuing civilians. So it's like you could get points for rescuing civilians or not saving the neutral pieces on the board. So it just brought this kind of unique feel to it. And I thought that'd be really cool. I was like, oh, how awesome would that be if we took a row of tables and, theme them for, a nation? Like, this row is the Signar tables. This row is the Kador tables. This row is the Retribution tables or Dusk tables.
Using that logic, all the tables are Kador tables, though.
Yeah,
It's
that's
true.
true. That's true.
You're just borrowing it.
But it'd be really cool aesthetically speaking to theme all those tables. So we could have a bunch of, Iosian ruins on the Dusk and Retribution tables. For Kador, we could have, mountains, the train yard, a forest, that lumber mill setup that Paul did a couple of months ago. So it just kind of got the gears in my head churning to, make the tables you want to. They advertise your game, you know what I mean? So if people are walking by, what are they going to look at? They're going to look at, our brown and gray tables with our little houses on it, which are cute. Like, they're cute, okay? But, or Lord of the Rings, that's next door, where you have, recreations of all these battles from the movies. You gotta make your tables look good so people come by and watch.
And then you were like talking about potentially maybe like a narrative event. So in the event, because Privateer Press is talking about doing those, events or using the app in order to go and push out, what is it, leagues or whatever it was. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to going to Warfare weekend and with talking to Gonzo to see all the different kind of events that they have going on there. I think it's really important. I guess we'll get into this more with the Sussy Scuff debrief, is really knowing your audience and being able to expand that community. So like going to Nova and looking at the schedule and the convention, all I could see is like, oh, these are going to be like very high tier events where we have masters and teams with a lot of, top tier competitive players. I would like to next year at Nova, and hopefully, again, we'll talk about this later with delegating out tasks and responsibilities, but I would like to have a narrative campaign that takes place that weekend. So we have something for everybody that, maybe you want a more casual experience. Of course, have the tournaments, like we're not going to get rid of those, but just to have that option there. And
it gives something for everybody, like that and that's what we want to do.
And that's the thing. So like these games are built on the backs of your casual players. So if you don't offer anything for the casual players, like how's that going to grow your gaming scene? You know what I mean?
And I mean, even you could have people like looking at the table like, what is this? Oh, they're doing that? This is the kind of games that you play? Like, I want some of that at that point.
Yeah, and like what Gonzo does, they have the bounty system thing where you like choose a house and then you earn points over the course of a weekend for your house. And, and that affects a prize pool. Like that would be cool where you're working towards something and it's not so competitive.
Yeah, I always liked the little extra prize pools that you could get. I remember TempleCon used to have this Iron Arena thing where you would just wander around and play pickup games, and every time you played a game, you'd earn a point, and then you could use that towards, getting some extra tokens or something, or more focus point tokens for the game. And those were always, a big draw because you'd meet some interesting people, you'd play some fun games, and you could get something to take home with you afterward.
I was going to just piggyback really quick, Dan, is one of my big takeaways back, and we could talk about this with the survey later, is the amount of time where we stayed in this one room playing this one game all day, which is great, right? Because we love the game, but it's so exhausting. And when you're in a city like DC or Philly, like I want to get out and explore the city while I'm there. You know what I mean? Like I just don't want to feel by the second day, actually, like I was feeling really run down. So I don't know how long these Mark IV games are going to be, but it's definitely a consideration. Like, do I want people playing War Machine for 12 hours straight in this convention hall?
I mean, I know that at least like when we were playing, it was like the beginning of the day as soon as we got into Nova, and then we were leaving, it was night. And especially if you're in a room like that has like no windows or anything like that, you have no sense of time.
It's like that casino feel.
Yeah.
And it's also late in the summer, so it's about the time the days are getting shorter anyway. So I think that was kind of doubling down on, on what we were where we were getting hit by. But
Sure.
speaking of Mark IV, I had a couple ideas. I know that we're going to have to change some things for the new types of tournaments. There's probably going to be some kind of shakeup, but generally speaking, I'm hoping that we don't have to completely reinvent scenarios and stuff. Assuming that we don't, just high level, there's a couple of neat ideas I've been noodling on for running Mark IV events. Like a more casual focused event might be having players play like a 3-round event where round 1 is at 50 points, round 2 is at 75, round 3 is at 100. And you just have an upgrade tier list that you might add in after the first round, after the second round, etc. That could be a neat twist to another more streamlined tournament. There's a lot of things that we can do with this new format that I think would be, really interesting. So we're going to have to, maybe if you guys want to leave some comments about any interesting convention tournament ideas that you might have, or even just like a narrative event. I know one year, Privateer Press at Lock and Load, they had this event where several players had to storm a fortress, and on the other side of the table, all of the players were like deploying their models on top of the city walls and stuff. And it was, you had to break down the doors and get through, or protect the doors and keep the enemies out. It seemed like that was a rare chance to do something really cool with miniatures, and I'd like to see more of that.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that. So I've been on a 125 point kick lately, and I played a 125 point game with Ryan from Maryland, and he threw out an apotheosis campaign where it was like scorn versus scorn, and we had to go destroy like 4 houses on the other side. I don't know what the scenario was, but it was just something fun. It was something different. It was like a palate cleanser.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. That's exactly the type of thing I'm talking about. A non-traditional objective, but something that 2 players can still have fun over. Or like Erica was saying, these set of tables are all Khador themed. These sets of tables are all themed from Ios or whatever. If it was the Khador one, maybe you're fighting in a snowstorm and you have to, and every once in a while you suffer a speed penalty or something.
Well, I mean, I still think like what Lauren ended up saying is that as a TO or an event organizer, you can change up how you want those steamrollers to work or if you want to add random like terrain elements, like the ball's in your court if you're running the event. You just have to make sure that your players know that it is. And I think that's important for if we're saying that this is a narrative type event, I'm pretty sure players would be drawn to that experience because it's something different.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's a whole new edition, and we're willing to experiment with some stuff. So if you've got some crazy ideas, let us know.
Okay, well, with that, let's go ahead and debrief the Sussy Scuff, because Eric was mentioning this earlier. Eric, were you able to grab the Google form that you did about, everyone's like experience with it?
Yeah.
The results from it?
So, I mean, tell about it. So I'm in the military, so I've kind of adopted some of what I have learned in my my time in the Army. So I'm really big on we call them after action reports or after action reviews in the Army, where we really want to get feedback from everybody, so the event organizers and the players, because that's such valuable information to get from people that are participating in an event. So hey, what went good, what can we sustain, or what was really bad that has to get addressed. So like we had the painting competition, right? And I forget who mentioned that to me. It might have been somebody at Owls. It was great suggestion. It was awesome. So a big takeaway from me from that was, okay, next year when we have a painting competition, maybe separate the huge bases from everybody else.
Hey, wasn't the guy that won that painting competition from Owls?
Yeah, so like maybe just having 2 separate, categories with the same, caliber of prizes, of course. But it brought up a good point. Bigger bases have bigger, bases. There's a little bit more.
It's more canvas.
I actually think that that's what happens at Boca Brawl, is that they do like a small, a medium, and a large base like models, and they're actually like there are different things there. Yeah.
So so I basically pushed out a survey a couple of days after the Sussy Scuff, and the big thing, the biggest feedback that I got was the casual experience. So 95% of the people that we polled, they wanted to maintain this more casual type of event. The rounds too. So I think between 3 and 4, the max was 4. Travel, like what distance people would drive to attend an event like this, if they had fun, and what type of feedback, the guys, like maybe some of the tables were too close together where players didn't have enough space between them and the person behind them. So taking that information, and Ryan from Maryland War Machine, shout out, he's been helping me research venues. So that's information that we're taking with us to help, make a choice when it comes to table space.
Okay, and then, well, what about, like, let's talk about how you actually designed the Sussy stuff, because when you originally pitched it, right, after we talked to Seth, after we talked to Gonzo, you kind of created a committee, and then you're, like, starting to task out certain things. Like, how did that go, and I guess what responsibilities were you thinking of when you kind of came up with the committee to begin with?
Sure. So the big thing going into it is, one, like, what is our overall objective? So that needs to be, clear. So with going into the Sussy Scuff, our meta, we're a little over a year old now. Maryland's the same. So when our metas were starting, we're like, hey, if we're still around in a year to celebrate, we should have this fun, dojo store showdown. So even though it's a tournament, it's in good fun. And knowing your audience. So our communities, we have a ton of new players that haven't necessarily tried their hand out at a tournament yet. So what's a way we can incentivize that? Well, instead of doing singles, what if we do a team? And the makeup of that team would be 1 veteran player and 2 junior players. So I think that really helped with our players' confidence in trying a tournament like this for the first time. So that was the big thing. And then for the committee was, I can't do it on my own. So first, it's, this is a big project. You could try and do it on your own. I'm sure if you listened to our first podcast series for back in February, it's very difficult. So delegation of responsibilities, pulling your community and seeing what strengths and ideas people have. So, Sam and Ryan, they helped a lot with the venue side of the house. I was more on the coordination for like the prizes, the start time, the actual event registration, and being able to delegate that out. So I asked for volunteers, and I had a lot of people step up in the community. And for some of the people that worked with me, this was their first time working on something like this. So I would, challenge other community leaders, reach out to your folks that haven't done this before, because that's really going to build up their confidence and their experience. Plus, it gives a different perspective to the table while you're planning. So things that I thought about for Delaware might not work for Maryland. So it was really beneficial having Sam and Ryan on the committee helping.
I remember also being able to find the team document, the structure of how the team tournament was going to be done. And we discussed a 5-person or 3-person event, but settled on 3.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Dan. Yeah, Dan is like great when it comes to doctrine and rules and stuff. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. Like, even my small contribution is just something that I'm happy to be able to offer. But what are your thoughts about? I guess I don't want to jump the gun again with it, but what are your thoughts about the next year? We're looking to maybe add more tables, add more teams. Do we go from 3 to 5, that sort of thing?
I actually kind of want to chime in on that, is that I really like the structure of 3 as opposed to 5. And my reasoning for that, I go back to like the 5-person event for Nova, where we had people dropping, and I don't know, I feel like losing a member like out of a team of 5 hurts a lot more than maybe losing one out of a team of 3. And at least for us, because we had so many people working, or at least part of that committee, they had their armies readily available, so that way we could spot fill those teams in there. So
yeah, I was gonna say that's a really good point, Paul, is if you do have a drop, it's a lot easier to find a rep versus on a 5-person team.
Yeah, so there was like that, and I think at least for the team sizes, how many teams do we have? Do we have 6 or do we have 8?
We had 6. So my one of my goals with the team and limiting it, so originally we had 24 players total, teams of 3. So my big thing is I didn't want to go any more than 3 rounds. Because again, for a lot of our players who were participating in the Sussy Scuff, this was their first steamroller. So again, knowing your audience, I don't want to like kill these guys on their first steamroller and having them play War Machine for 12 hours straight, because, my first steamroller, like I was done after my third game. My second game, I was like, okay, how do I exit the simulation? So I just wanted to make sure that the day was paced really well. So we had rounds 1 and 2, and then we had a player break / rest for an hour so people could go out and get food and just kind of decompress and hang out and come back for the final round. And we got really good feedback on that. Like pretty much 100% of our players were like, yeah, we really enjoyed that extended break between the second and third round.
As a player that notoriously plays like 2-hour games every game, every round of the tournament, I'm always there until the last minute, it seems. Not having a break in between rounds is so crushing. I'm just so exhausted.
I mean, you just get burned out. And I don't know, like you and I will go up the portal at times, and you just, hey man, do you got a Cliff Bar? Can I get a Cliff Bar?
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah, not to be like, this is like the medic in me, but I'm all about the, player nutrition. It's important. Rest
That's
is
right.
important.
Drink water.
no, 100%. Yeah.
Get some protein in you. I'm squirreling these damn Cliff Bars away in my cargo pants pockets.
Hey, Erica, can I actually maybe like this is a Dan question. What about like making the team event more fun? Because didn't you end up doing like the once a day feat where you did, what is it called, the Sussy Shuffle or something?
Yeah,
Right.
that came from Rhode Island, right, Dan? Is that Captain Khan does that?
I can't remember. I have seen it in a couple of different events. I don't recall the first place I saw it. But the idea is that when you have 3 people on a team, there's less ability to kind of choose and create matchups in this team event. So they give you the advantage of being able to say, once per tournament, we're going to use our quote-unquote team feat, whatever name you want to give that. We gave it the Susquehanna themed name, the Sussy Shuffle. So you can say, I'm going to use my team feat, and I'm going to switch these 2 players. And that way, I fix the matchups in 2 of the games. You have to have like a judge there, so they'll write down on your team sheet that you've already used your team feat, because you can only use it once across the entire event. And funny enough, the one time our team used the team feat, the other opposing team just used it again, so it didn't really work out for us. But
Do you think it would be better if you had maybe 2 or 3 different feats, and like at the beginning of the tournament you could go choose it? Like one is you can switch a map, you could switch a players, or maybe like I'm going to add 5 more points to my list or something like that.
Yeah, the only thing I would challenge to that is, again, like for a lot of people, this is their first time. So that like Swiss, what is it? The method that we use for the teams, where if your team A or team B.
yeah, I think it was the German style.
Yeah, so that could be very overwhelming for new players, because I know for like the first round, like we had a judge with each, set of tables to help, and Dan, of course, to help facilitate that. So maybe down the line, again, we would have to know what our audience is. So I wouldn't want to overwhelm them with a bunch of extra rules on top of a complicated game.
No, of course. I'm just like wondering though, if I'm gonna go feat and then you feat as well, like if it's like a moot point at that point. But
Well, so that's the thing about choosing to go first or not. So like if you elect to, drop your army first.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
That
it's
makes
just
sense.
so then that gives a benefit for the person that doesn't drop, or the team that doesn't drop first.
Okay. And then there's one other thing I wanted to ask is you got a lot of cool custom swag made. You had the little 40 millimeter feet tokens, the ones with Maryland and Delaware, and the Sussy Scuff. Like, I guess this is something that I don't think I ever hear other organizers or podcasts talk about. Where do you go to find these really cool custom widgets? Like, if I want to go do something for PAX, where would I go to go do this?
So I know a guide. So it's reaching out to your community. So I'm very fortunate that I got some great soldiers in my unit, and one of my fellow NCOs, he and his wife, this is like a side business that they have. So he hooked us up with these really, cool, unique 40 millimeter bases for the Sussy Scuff and Delaware War Machine and Maryland War Machine. So taking a page out of Seth's book, I wanted to make sure that everybody, left with something to kind of commemorate the event. So it's a 40 mil base that they can use as a proxy or a flag. That was really important to me. So that's a way to save money, is kind of like get out there and look and see who's doing stuff. A lot of tabletop gamers, like in our immediate community, they have 3D printers, they do woodworking. So your token guy or girl might be, in your immediate gaming community. So it's just reaching out. Etsy is also a great resource.
What was another one that you used that like it was the Fever, what is it?
I call it Fiverr. So that's a great website I use for basically like our art assets that we use here at Tried and True and on our social media sites. And that links you up with artists all across the world. And it's great. Like you negotiate prices with them for different projects. It's how I have found our musician. Yeah, highly recommend. And then for the pins, that one I did for pre-orders because we got really, really nice pins done for the Sussy Scuff. They're a little bit more expensive. So I coordinated the pins with the trophy person that we use for our plaque for our steamrollers. And I took a pre-order on that. So that's the other thing I would say is if you're doing swag, add it to like your ticket cost or for your pre-orders. So before you like upfront cost this stuff, because it can be really expensive and you can lose money, at least if you have that pre-order, monies, you can use that upfront instead of, being out of pocket with this stuff.
Okay. Was there anything else with the Sussy Scuff that we needed to go and talk about? Because I'm thankful that you talked about that because I think about like the Boca Brawl or Nova, they had like the custom 50mm bases, and I would definitely like to be able to have something similar to that for PAX. Was there anything else, or can we go into talk about like actually setting up for PAX now?
I would just say like for prize support too, reaching out to Privateer Press. They've always sent us stuff. Like if there's just things sitting on the shelf, they'll send to you, or players that have been in the community for a while. Like again, our prize table at the Sussy Scuff got more insane as the day went on, which was like freaking awesome because we had like new players walk away with like practically the full faction. So
I actually got to go see Anthony's full Kador faction.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go and finish up with our last point. We're talking about setting up for PAX. Now, Tony from Advanced Maneuvers, pitches it. Hey, basically, Tony said, have you ever tried doing something for PAX? And I said, I tried. I got busy. I never really pursued it further. And he said, hey, I'm going to go and figure this out. And sure enough, like he messaged us like about a week or so later saying like, yep, I got a spot for PAX. Here's like the write-up. Here's this, that. So I'm super excited about this. Now we have our own little Discord channel. We're talking about coordinating everything at this point. Let's talk about like the important bits, right? So we need to figure out people running it. We need to figure out the stuff. And we also need to figure out like it in general. So let's go ahead and talk about tapping into other metas for the stuff. So we have our own custom maps. We have the train yard we're painting up. We got the farm. We have the forest and stuff. Like we have all that stuff. And Advanced Maneuvers has theirs. And then it actually Grant Ritchie, he's going to go see if the battle bunker can potentially help us out. Do you think that's going to be enough things? Especially since Mark IV is really focusing on like 3D elements now?
Well, we'll have to piece it all out. I think it would be a good idea to take an inventory so we know exactly what we're dealing with and, we can count the number of things. You'd want probably 8 to 10 pieces of terrain, varied. I'd err on the high end. I would say like 10 pieces of terrain per table to set aside. That way, if you do create a table that has less terrain features, you have a couple of options still to move around. Or, if you randomly pick up 10 pieces of terrain, they don't go together on this table, it's just not working out, you can still salvage from some other table's terrain.
It might actually be a good idea as well is that when we do our tables, maybe we just try to keep each like meta's like terrain together just so that way it doesn't get all mixed up. I mean, the inventory would help out as well, but I mean, that was just, foolproof it a little bit further.
Yeah, I agree. We can start by having a rough estimate of saying, if you were to run a local tournament, how many tables could you support? How many physical tables could you build out? Regardless of whether the players show up or not, like what would your max size event be in that local meta? Let's add those things together and maybe subtract 1 or 2 tables. And then that gives us a rough estimate of how many we could support.
All right, so let's say that we have all this stuff, right? We have our maps, we have our terrain, we have everything that's necessary. We have 10 pieces of terrain, plus like, the mat, 3D elements, all that stuff. How do we get the stuff up there? Like because I mean, you've been in line, right? We've all been up at PAX. We know that it's huge. Like, how would we go transport all the stuff up? Would we like have somebody there to like receive it like down somewhere? Like, how do you think we would go about doing this? Because it's not in like a parking lot. It's like we have to it's like at the convention center.
Well, I think Tony's the one that's running it full bore, right? So I'm expecting at this point that we would have to go through him. It's likely that he'll be able to contact the organizers of the convention early, maybe get in the doors the night before. So we'll need to be able to see what our options are. And that sort of thing is something that'll likely have to go through the staff that runs that convention more than anything else. We'll need to funnel through them. However we approach them or talk to them through Tony or whatever.
I think I actually agree with you with trying to set it up the night before would probably be better. I was wondering though, because I was personally thinking like driving up earlier, that Saturday morning to go set everything up. But I think if everything was done like the night before, I think that'd just be a lot easier at that point. That way you don't feel like you're rushing in the morning and trying to meet the deadline. You basically just show up with your cup of coffee. Your players are there. You sign them in and you roll dice.
Yeah, I mean, even when we were down at Nova, we were there as the convention was opening, and we still saw people that were putting out the mats on top of tables and getting those Lord of the Rings tables set up. So even if it's just there is a way that you can get in earlier, that's that's what we need to pursue.
I think that's also good as well because God forbid that somebody is unable to show up. Let's just say like, okay, we're going to go drive everything up that Friday. I think that'd probably be better because if something happened where if maybe myself, I got preoccupied by something, whether it's family or whatever, and like, hey, I cannot drive up this night, somebody can at least come to my house, pick it up, and they can go drive it up, or they can at least do it like that morning as well. So that way it's that if we were just left to only being that Saturday morning and something were to come up, well, then you're maybe down like a couple of tables because you don't have the stuff. So no, I agree. I think trying to get everything set up a day before would probably be the best. And then let's just go and finish up like, well, who would do what? So I was talking to Tony and he said that, running the event, but also he wanted to have a demo table up. I guess if it's a 32-person steamroller, that is if I remember correctly, that's a 4-round event, right? So it's 32 to 16 to 8 to 4. No, wait, that's a 5-round event.
Yeah, it's 5-round.
Okay, so it's a 5-round event. So how many judges do you think we would have to have for that event? Like, what roles do you see happen? Let's say that everyone plays, I will go set up, I'll do this. Like, what roles do you think would be necessary for the day of? Like, how many judges, a person on stats or, score tracker, what have you?
I think we need to kind of go to the community on this one. We know, Seth and other people have run these large events, and if we're expecting, that many players, we're probably going to need to put several judges out, but how many judges per number of tables do they loosely suggest? It also depends on, availability of people. If this is the first big convention to have a Mark IV event, maybe it gets packed. Maybe some of the locals are more interested in playing instead of helping, run. These are all conversations that we're going to need to have as we run up to December.
The other thing I'm also wondering is that because it's going to be mostly new, and again with like the beta rules and stuff, if they even change anything, is that if however many judges you end up having, you need to make sure that all those judges like know the rules, or at least are competent enough in it that especially with like unit movement, am I engaged, am I not engaged, can this unit charge or not charge? Like, I feel like that's going to be most of the judge rulings like that day, because it's going to be a lot of people like learning the stuff for the first time.
I am kind of expecting to have to ask for extra judges or padding those positions, because I am sure that there will be a lot of stumbles, in the early days of this edition, just because of some of the dynamic changes that we're seeing. Or because, God help us, some of the very minutia items change. Like, one model advantage, such as, Gunfighter did something different in the last edition than it does now, and, players don't remember that. At the end of the day, if they're able to resolve it at their table and the game proceeds just fine, and so be it, right? But if they do stop and call for a judge, and a lot of people call for a judge, we're going to need more judges.
I would also say that's also a contributing factor of why we're keeping the points low, right? So it's a 50-point event, so that'll help. So it's less models to be less complicated with calling and learning this new edition of the game.
No, I think that'll be fine. Okay. Well then, I think with that, I think we've actually hit everything. Is there anything else about PAX that we need to kind of think about?
Hop on either our Discord or Maryland's Discord and give us some feedback and ideas, because we'd like to execute on some of that cool stuff that people are thinking about.
All right. Well, I guess with that actually concludes this series. Am I right? So about hosting your large events. So starting off with Seth talking about the Boca Brawl, your 3-day event, and then breaking it down to Liberty Brawl, and having Gonzo talk about Warfare Weekend and doing qualifiers. I think overall, like, this has been a great series to hopefully inspire people to go and create their own stuff. I mean, if you want to go and create some Mark IV related events, use the stuff that PP is going to push out, maybe turn it into something big, use those leagues, or if you want to do something bigger, like tap into other people. And I'm pretty sure everyone is going to want to see you be successful.
Yeah, and if you've got, if you yourself have run any really large events, we'd love to hear from you. Things that you thought were successful, or things that maybe went hilariously the wrong way. Tell us, shoot us over some of your war stories if you want to leave a comment or anything.
Even this, if we've even not even mentioned something that you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't talk about, factor X that we didn't even talk about, like, put that in the comments below as well, because any feedback would be super helpful.
Sure. As everything goes in life and War Machine in general, you always want to build up better and do more the next time, and really push yourselves and what you're capable of. Running larger events is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I just special shout out and thank you to Seth, Grant, and Gonzo. Your guys' guidance is it's really appreciated and well received. So thank you so much for being a good mentor to myself and our communities here. Thanks to Ryan and Sam for continuing, to co-run events with Delaware. It's been a lot of fun watching our communities and our metas grow over the past year. So I'm looking forward to 2023 and all that's here to come. Oh, and good luck to all the WTC teams out there.
I think at the time that this is going to be out, I think WTC would already be over. But
all right, well, I hope you have fun and safe travels.
All right. Well, hey, with that, we want to thank everybody for following along. For our patrons on Patreon, thank you for your continued support. We want to give everybody a heads up, though, with the conclusion of this series, we're going to go take a break until our new idea for a series pops up. But right now, we're interested in, painting models and doing terrain and getting stuff ready for PAX. So I guess we will catch you on the next series. So thank you for your time listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.